If you had to say goodbye to your mother today, what would be the overarching feeling you'd have? Regret? Desperation? Relief? Or maybe peace? Do you feel at peace with your mother, or is there unresolved tension between you? In today's episode, I'm sharing my personal journey toward making peace with my mother. How I found my own way to heal, not through big conversations or dramatic moments, but through acceptance, inner work, and gratitude. I have no idea if this will work for everyone, but my hope is that this episode might inspire you to start your own process, whether your mother is still with you or not. Welcome back to the Doula Johanna podcast. As I'm getting older, many people around me are going through separations, and almost as many are losing their parents. It's a stage in life where those transitions seem unavoidable and they hit so deeply. As I move forward on my own journey to become a death doula, I've been having more conversations with friends about their experiences with the loss of their parents. What I've learned is that regardless of whether someone had a good or bad relationship with their mother, the experience of losing her can be deeply transformative. I'd like to share a story that really shaped my own perspective on this. 9 years ago, my mother and I were planning to meet at my older sister's house in Bremerhaven, in the very north of Germany. She was traveling from Wrocław in Poland, and I was coming by train from Munich with my oldest daughter, who was just 7 months old at the time. I was sitting on the train playing with my baby, and out of nowhere, I received a phone call from the Charité hospital in Berlin. The doctor on the other end told me that my mother had suffered a severe heart attack while changing trains in Berlin. Strangers had performed CPR on her for 40 minutes before emergency responders arrived. They shocked her heart 17 times to get it beating again. The doctor told me that they had to put her in an artificial coma to protect her brain, and they had no way of knowing yet whether she would survive or what kind of brain damage she would wake up with. I remember that moment so clearly. I was in total shock, and my mind raced with fear. We weren't prepared for this. We were not at peace, not at all. I made my way to my sister's house, still reeling, and we drove to Berlin the next day. We stayed with my friend Johanna, whose support in those days I will never forget. While my sister and I took turns sitting by my mother's bedside, waiting for her to regain consciousness, I carried this one thought: she just has to live. We cannot say goodbye like this. It was such a roller coaster of emotions, especially with my baby there, who wasn't allowed in the ICU and had to be cared for by Johanna. I love you so much, Johanna. I will never forget this. I will never forget what you did for us during those days. After several days of uncertainty, my mother woke up. Thankfully, she survived. And not only did she regain full cognitive function, but she also retained her incredible drive. She lost 30% of her heart muscle, but none of her spirit. In that moment, I made myself a promise that I would make peace with her. So when the time came for her to leave, I would be able to let her go. In practice, making peace with my mother was far easier said than done. Our relationship was complicated, to say the least, and I carried a lot of resentment still and a lot of heartache from my childhood that I struggled to let go of. As a child, I often felt that she wasn't really interested in me, that she didn't truly know me. I perceived her as so self-centered and not very caring in a way. It took me decades to shift my perspective. It wasn't until I became pregnant myself that I began to understand the immense decision it is to bring a child into the world. My mother was advised to abort me, because she had just undergone antiviral treatment, and the drugs in the early 80s that she took were known to be teratogenic. Yet, she chose to keep me. And I never truly grasped the magnitude of that decision until I was pregnant myself. Before becoming a mother, I had such lofty ideals about how I would do things better than my own mom. I convinced myself I would be kinder and more patient and more sane. And then I found myself in the thick of motherhood, screaming at my own kids and often feeling like I was failing massively. It was then that I began to see my mom for what she was: human. Considering her own childhood in post-war Poland, it's nothing short of a miracle that she turned out the way she did. She had endured so much suffering as a young child that she could have just as easily become a psychopath. But instead, she did the best she could. And now, finally, I can truly see that. When I first thought about making peace with my mother, I had this picture in my mind, a big emotional scene, like something out of a movie. I imagined us sobbing together, forgiving each other for all the wrongs we'd done, and letting go of the past. But that's not how it happened. Instead, making peace with my mother turned out to be more of an internal shift, subtle and far less dramatic than I expected. I realized that the idea of forgiveness, as I had envisioned it, wasn't what I truly needed. It wasn't even mine to give. It just became clear that it wasn't something I had to bestow upon anyone. Who am I to forgive her, or anyone for that matter? I'm not superior to her. My pain does not weigh heavier than hers. I'm not without my own flaws, and in the end, I came to understand that there's nothing to forgive. We're both shaped by our experiences. And as long as I am committed to doing better and growing from all the mistakes and from all the things I went through, that's what really matters. Instead of forcing myself to forgive, I focused on something else: gratitude and acceptance. I completely shifted my perspective, letting go of the need for grand gestures. I didn't need to forget the past or pretend that the pain wasn't real, but I could make peace with it. I could accept my mother for who she was and who she is today. I could acknowledge her imperfections without pretending that they didn't affect me. What's more, I could accept that I have the power to create my own life now. I don't have to hold on to past hurts or expect my mom to change, but I can choose to embrace who she is and move forward with peace in my heart. One of the most powerful shifts I made in this journey was realizing that gratitude, even in the most challenging relationships, can be truly transformative. My relationship with my mother wasn't perfect, far from it. But I began to see that there was always something to be grateful for. The most obvious place to start, of course, was with the gift of life itself. Without her, I wouldn't be here, period. That simple truth alone sparked a sense of peace within me, and I started there. But as I reflected more, I realized that there were many other things to be grateful for in my mother. She is incredibly courageous, always willing to dive into new ideas. She can bring laughter with her wit and sense of humor. And she has this unique ability to sing Polish soldier songs like no one else. Despite the pain she caused me in my childhood, I now see that she gave me a life that was far easier than her own. She loves me in the only way she knows how, shaped by her own experiences. I can choose now as an adult to focus on her positive qualities while setting boundaries around behaviors that are no longer acceptable to me. I've come to understand that making peace doesn't necessarily mean becoming best friends with our mothers or anyone. We don't even have to keep them in our lives if it's too destructive. but we can always find something to be grateful for, something we've learned that has shaped who we are today. Even in the most strained or complicated relationships, there is something to thank the person for. For my mom, despite the ups and downs, I am grateful for the life that she gave me, for the lessons I learned, even the painful ones. Those lessons, though difficult, they made me the person I am today. Acknowledging this gratitude allowed me to create a space for acceptance in my heart. I didn't need her to be perfect anymore. I didn't need her to apologize for everything. What I needed was to accept her as she was. And in the process, I learned to accept myself as well. Making peace for me begins within. It doesn't require a conversation, nor does the other person need to change. Peace is an internal shift. It's about acknowledging the past, accepting it for what it is, and letting go of the need for it to be any different. We can make peace with someone without maintaining a close relationship with them or even keeping them in our life if it was unhealthy. Some relationships are toxic and it's okay to set boundaries. Peace doesn't always lead to reconciliation. It simply means accepting the relationship for what it was, what it is now, and finding the strength to release the grip of the past pain. Luckily, making peace with our mothers or anyone doesn't require them to change or even be involved. It starts with the inner work we do within ourselves. To begin, you could take a moment to reflect on your feelings and thoughts about your mother. Journaling, meditative practices, or simply sitting with your emotions can help guide this process. There's no need for a heart-to-heart conversation for peace to take root. It's about looking at our mother with empathy. If you have an opportunity to have a great conversation with your mother, please go for it. But it's not necessary to find peace, at least in my opinion. We want to look at our mothers with empathy, understanding their limitations and releasing the hold that unresolved emotions have on our life. A simple ritual can also aid this process. You could consider writing a letter to your mother, even if you never send it. In this letter, you can express both the hurt and the gratitude you feel. Acknowledge what you've learned from her, both the pain and the lessons. And most importantly, let go of the need for her to change or to meet your expectations. Peace is not about fixing the past. It's about acceptance. When we hold on to anger, resentment, or disappointment, the person we hurt the most is ourselves. Every human deserves to be seen in their entirety. No one is only good or only bad. I want my children to see me the way I see my mother now, with all my flaws, my complexity, and my growth. I don't need to pretend to be flawless for them. I think it's important for them to witness the way I open my heart to my mother, even when our relationship isn't always easy, and they are well aware of that. As a grown adult, I now have so much more love for my mother than I ever did before. Our relationship feels healed, not through transformative conversations or dramatic moments of forgiveness, but through acceptance, gratitude, and a willingness to see her as she is. I feel lighter now, no longer carrying the burden of resentment. And I think she can feel that too, and she can also feel lighter for it. As I move forward, I'm empowered to continue creating peace within myself and in my relationships. I would love to hear what comes up for you when you reflect on your own relationship with your mother. Is she or was she your closest confidant, your harshest critic, or your fiercest supporter? I hope that you can take away something from this episode. Maybe that peace starts from within and that the power to heal is yours. Let me know if you could relate with my process or if you have a completely different approach. And also, if you know anyone who could benefit from listening to this episode, please share it with them. I would really appreciate that. I'm looking forward to seeing you again next week. Take care and be your own life doula.